Welcome. Afternoon, if you happen to be over the Midwest or the East, and you happen to be tuning in, a former San Diegan or what have you, a former Charger fan who knows Jim Laslavic well, a former San Diegan who knows Jim Laslavic well from television, former San Diegan or a current San Diegan or whatever. I'm Ted Leitner. To my viewers and listeners, I am more known the last 10 or 15 years as Uncle Teddy. Laz is still known as Laz. If you stop 10 people in San Diego and say, "Who's Laz?" they would know exactly who it is. And that's Jim Laslavic, the former number 54 of the, not LA, San Diego Chargers.
That's right, baby.
That's he is.
Well, Ted, yeah. I spent 5 years in Detroit with the Lions.
That's
right,
a
long time. And then I was traded out here, and I'll never forget the reaction. It was like, I wanted to be traded. It was time. And I was not at home at the time. When I got to my house in Birmingham, Michigan, there were like a covey of my friends gathered around, and they're all bummed out. "Oh, man, you got traded." And I said, "Where?" He said, "San Diego." I said, "Yeah."
Are you kidding me?
I was the happiest guy in the block forever.
Oh, please. And you ask anybody in the NFL, and I know it having been much longer in the Major League Baseball, that all the surveys of what's your favorite city, what's your favorite city to visit, and San Diego wins all the time over San Francisco, over Los Angeles, and I've lived that through my entire time with the Padres, so there is absolutely no question. So you said the Lions, and that was 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And then the Chargers.
4 years.
And did I dream this?
Green Bay.
Did you not finish up with the Packers for a year or someplace?
Yeah, I finished. My final year was in Green Bay. And I have to tell you about. Let me tell you about that, since we have time to talk. Since that's what we do, we're here to talk.
Yes.
I was invited to leave the Chargers. I was cut after 4 years, coaching change, that kind of stuff, and I was picked up by the Packers. I actually called the Packers because I knew the defensive coordinator he had been my linebacker coach in Detroit, and I called him and said, "John, maybe you've heard I'm available." He said, "Yeah, we know. I was wondering how long it would take for you to call me." He said, "Give me a week. I think we can fit you in." And a week later, 2 games into the season, I was in Green Bay in a Green Bay Packer uniform. And I got number 60, which John Meyer was the coach and defensive coordinator. He's since passed on, but John was a terrific guy. And he said, "Yeah, I'm sort of sorry about having to give you number 60. But, your other numbers that you wore in the NFL, they were all taken on the team, obviously."
Right.
And I said, "John, it's a number. At the end of the week, I'll get a paycheck. Thank you very much. You can put me in any number you want. You can put 00 on my back. I'm here. Thank you."
Did you? And this is the question I asked in stupidity, because I've only been to Detroit, for the '84 playoffs, World Series rather, with the Padres.
Yeah.
And then I think only twice with the Padres when interleague play started. And downtown is not exactly Palm Beach by any means, and the reputation and the jokes. I remember the radio comedian, what's his name, Fred Allen. This is before both our times. The radio comedian Fred Allen, back in the 40s and 50s, his definition of Detroit was 2 Newarks. So it doesn't have a great reputation. And did you dislike it? Did you like it? Did you love it, or what?
I really, really did enjoy it because I played in downtown Detroit at Old Tiger Stadium for 2 seasons.
Great stadium.
This was shortly, the riots had been a few years earlier in '68, and there was still trouble in the early '70s. I got there in '73. So there was a white flight going on, and it was strange. It was honestly, it's a great city, and with wonderful people, and most of those people were moving out of downtown. Right. And so we ended up in Birmingham or Bloomfield Hills and that kind of thing. But it was the fans there are so intense about their teams. And that, Ted.
Oh, sure.
You've traveled around. Where did you find the best fan? I mean, San Diego fans, take nothing away from them, but where do you find in your travels that had really the best fans?
Wow. I don't know about the term best fan, because you'd have to really break it down. And okay, what's the requisite for being a good fan? So
right.
Then how many of those? Because you go to New York, where I grew up at Yankee Stadium, and the old Yankee Stadium, when that guy Jerry Coleman was literally the second baseman of the New York Yankees, and you made an error, and it was boo. It didn't matter, home team, and that goes on with the Mets in New York, because I've seen that when I was still there. The Mets started in '62. I was still in high school, and so if you think those are not the best fans because they boo the home team guys, and I don't. When I look back with let's just go with Padres. And very little booing at the Charger games that I remember, and no specifically for a player, but Benito Santiago, who I got to know pretty well after he retired, didn't have a good relationship when he was here, and he had a bad rap when he was here, and Benito was booed at the stadium, the old place. But I have to really search my brain to think who else of the Padres was booed, and I can't really think of a Charger. There was a Charger kicker in my time, and certainly not Ralph or the latter guys, but before that, who missed a lot of kicks. I won't. I'm too old to remember that many names right now to do that. So they're great fans in San Diego because they showed up, and what they're doing now at Petco Park is unbelievable. When you're a market size in television of like 29 or whatever San Diego is, and last year you outdrew the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, and the Philadelphia Phillies, then we know how great, and I'm not kissing up to them because some of them like me, some of them don't. In San Diego, it's always been that way. But these are fantastic baseball fans, and they showed up in large droves, most of the time towards 60,000 when you guys played.
Oh, yeah.
The Chargers are teams that were not on a regular basis good. Like my Padre teams of the 80s and 90s, they were not on a regular basis good. But I really think, and I'm not just saying this, San Diego fans are underrated nationally. Everybody talks about the fire of the Red Sox fans in Fenway and the Yankee fans and the Cub fans and all that stuff. But I really believe there's no fandom that I think is more in love. And I'll tell you a great example of that. When the Padres made the playoffs in '84 for their first time ever, Jerome Holtzman, long-time writer for the Chicago Tribune, in the press box asked me, "Is it always like that here?" And the crowd was so. You remember when the Padres came down 2-0, and Gary Templeton was the first introduced when they introduced both teams, like they did on the first game in Detroit. And the noise level was when Gary went out there and waved his hat. And Gary was not a demonstrative kind of player. He was picked on for being too smooth and didn't seem to hustle, but he did. He just made it look so smooth because he was a remarkable premier athlete, blue chip, as they say. And Gary waved his hat, and that response to him had Cub people, including Holtzman, saying to me, "This is the loudest crowd I've ever seen in my life." And we have heard that through playoffs with the Padres and when they played the Dodgers here and beat them in that series and all that stuff. So I'm not kissing up the Padre fans, but in my travels, they are as loud and show up as good as anyone. Now, you played in Detroit, like you said, and they do. They live for their sports fans.
I'll defend. I will completely agree with what you just said. Who is that?
It's true. It's true.
Look at this. Can you see it? Is he on your screen? How'd that happen?
and I'll just go back for a second. Just go back a second, Jim. When I said people have always said that you either hate Ted or you love Ted or you like Ted, whatever. And I really was my cockles were warmed later in my career when I maybe became older and less obnoxious, possibly, and that's a big chance too. But I've had such great comments from fans now of I didn't like you then, but I like you now. But that has changed also to a new degree because, to be honest, I've gone on X, the former Twitter, and since I don't have it, and I'm wearing an SD here. I have a Padre shirt on. Just coincidentally, but I'm not here representing the Padres. I want to make that clear. So when I finally was not with the Padres anymore as an ambassador after last year, that was 5 years as an ambassador, and that was it. And so I'm not here representing the Padres in any way, nor San Diego State, because I'm done with them. So I'll try to speed this up. Since I didn't have a boss that would say, "Why are you saying those things about Trump or politics or whatever?" I did not do that ever. But now that I had nobody to answer to, or I might cause problems for the Padres or Aztecs, I have been moved to make comments. And I don't do politics. I have never done it for the most part, but I had to come out recently because and this will be my only political comment for the day, I feel that this is not about politics. And so all these people say, hey, Ted, I liked you. And I had one that broke my heart, Jim, that said, Ted, my dad used to pick me up from the time I was a little boy, and we'd listen to the Padre games, and I loved you, and you became my hero. But your political comments now, and I don't like you anymore. And that hurts me because everybody wants to be liked. And you've had so much of that and been so liked as a player, an excellent player, and a broadcaster in San Diego with NBC. So everybody wants to be liked by everybody. But unless you're Vin Scully as a broadcaster, there's going to be people that don't like you and that hate you. So I just wanted to point out as a kind of mea culpa to fans who think, well, I used to like you, but now you're a leftist or you're a communist or a socialist, all these crazy things. I only commented about Trump because I believe our Constitution is the most sacred document in the history of mankind, even beyond the Magna Carta of England. And a lot of our Constitution was based on the Magna Carta, which set England free and so forth. And so I just think the threat to the Constitution, our freedoms, people being shot to death without reason for not even committing crimes, all the things that's been happening to this very day. I think if you don't speak out on then you're not patriotic and you're not being a good American. And if you voted for that malignancy, you need to rethink what you've done. And that's all I'll say about that.
No, that's, let me interject here.
I used to like you. I used to like you, but you're a leftist pig and all this stuff. It ain't about Republican and Democrats. It's about my country, our country.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. I agree with you. And here's the thing.
I'm good.
I agree with you. Now, my dad was an immigrant from Croatia, and he came to this country, and this country gave him a chance. And he took advantage of that chance. He worked in the steel mills, never missed a day of work in his life at the mills. He got at the end of 40 years, he got a pin. I still have it. I'll wear it next time. Did I ever tell you this story?
Cool.
I probably did. But he got a pin. That's what you got for 40 years in the mills. He never missed a day of work. He loved this country because it gave him an opportunity, a chance to be free, a chance to vote, a chance to speak out if he wanted to.
Yep.
He didn't. Mostly he wanted to hang out at my grandmother's saloon where he met my mother and he got married, had 4 kids. So it's a great country. Just give everybody a chance. Yeah. That's what makes us great. That's why when you're talking about a good sports team, they're good from top to bottom. The bottom guy isn't going to be who's a great player is going to be Tony Gwynn all the time. But the bottom guy, if you have the right bottom guys, they work hard and they're a good influence and they're good to be around in the clubhouse, in the dugout, or on the sidelines in my case. And I know that because I was a starter for 5 years and then I tore up my knee a couple of times and I became a fill-in. And you have to make that decision. What kind of fill am I going to be? Am I going to be a jerk, or am I going to work my tail off to make this team and make my teammates better? And if I get a chance to play, even better.
That is so true. But the part of that freedom, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. And I'll give you a good example. I won't name the player, but I was traveling with the Aztecs, and I'm on a 30-seat charter basketball team, and they're teasing one of the guys from Africa. Because those guys basically some of them lived in huts. And the great line by Vladimir Guerrero, when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the baseball player, and he was telling stories about growing up in the Dominican. And he said, the first time I came into a clubhouse, they had cases of water stacked up to the ceiling and bubble gum and sunflower seeds and food, a buffet. And he said, I was just stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And when the Cuban team used the Padre clubhouse here during the first World Baseball Classic, the Cuban players were telling the media, I'm in heaven. There's nothing like this in Cuba. At any ballpark, at any clubhouse, you Americans have so much. It's absolutely stunning. And you go into locker rooms, and you've been in the Padre clubhouse 1,000 times like me, and we see all that, the buffet before the game, after the game, and all the things they have there, and brand new shoes and everything. Foreign players look at that and think, oh my God. And Juan Samuel, who was playing then for the Dodgers, said, hey, I had a cardboard glove my entire youth. Wow. I had a cardboard glove. And going back to Vladimir Guerrero with those cases of water, he said, when we were walking back from playing ball with our cardboard gloves made out of milk containers, I would get down on my hands and knees and lick the puddles after a rain because I was thirsty after we played. We had no bottled water. Many of our huts and whatever we lived in didn't have running water. We had an outhouse in the back. So we have never lived like that. Our parents, for the most part, never lived like that. And many of our grandparents never lived like that. So freedom is something we have, in fact, taken for granted. The only good thing, in my personal opinion, I speak not for Laz or anybody else, is that Trump has shown us one thing. Freedom has to be appreciated. Sometimes it has to be fought for. We know sometimes it has to be died for, because 1 million American men and women have died in the wars to keep us free and keep these freedoms that I think this man is doing away with. Inexcusable.
Let me interject there, because
Sure.
I've been thinking about this. He's a draft avoider dodger.
Right.
And he's sending our troops into harm's way.
Right.
And the Vietnam War was a colossal, whatever you want to call it. It was colossal, though.
That's what
I was in college. I had a student deferment.
That's in the military they call a cluster. You know what?
Ted, I had two good friends in my hometown who did not have student deferments. Jim Pocky and Jim Karras. Terrific guys. They both died in Vietnam.
Right.
And and I look at that situation and think how unfair it was, and how this guy is now president. He was a bigger draft avoider than I was. And it just annoys the hell out of me that he is sending our troops into harm's way. And I just hope this doesn't lead to more death.
And I know what you're saying. And it's not just president of the United States. And by the way, those of you tuning in, and I've 4,700 comments on X. Hey, Ted, I like your sports. I like your talk shows. But if you're going to talk politics, I'm not going to listen. So quite up front, Jim and I don't have intentions of talking a lot of politics. Just in this first broadcast, we have had technical difficulties that we've been working on to come back after we tried once to do it, and I screwed it up. And I have no tech savvy whatsoever. It was all my fault. And so in this particular case, you're not just the president, you're the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the greatest in the history of mankind for the greatest country in the history of mankind. The idea that you have the credibility to be commander-in-chief when you have told, not just as Jim said, you're a draft dodger, you had a phony letter from your father's doctor say you had bone spurs. As General Milley said, I own my spurs on the battlefield. Nobody. I didn't earn my spurs from a doctor's letter when he was when he was an aide, and of course got fired by Trump. And the idea that you have the credibility to be commander in chief, but I don't blame Trump for that. He didn't elect himself. It's the people who voted for him, especially the second time, who knew he was a draft dodger, unfit to be commander in chief, and had told two of those four-star generals, General Kelly and General Milley, at Arlington, looking at all the graves, and at Normandy, looking at all the graves. And he said to each of those generals, explain to me, because he's a malignant narcissist, so he honestly, give him some slack. He doesn't know. And asked, what do those guys die for? And they were taken aback and said, Mr. President, they died for their country. It's the ultimate sacrifice. They love their country, and if called upon by their government, they answered that call, and they died to keep us free. And he said, according to General Milley and General Kelly, I would believe two four-star generals before this guy, okay? Who clearly we know, even his voters must know he's a pathological liar. He just, every time he opens his mouth. It's the old joke. We only know the guy's lying when his mouth is moving. Old joke, bad joke, but apropos. And the general said, what do you mean? What did they die for? And so he asked them, do you pay the military a lot of money? Did they do it because they're getting paid a lot? No, they get paid very little. They've always gotten paid very, very little, better now than the old days. And it literally could not understand the concept and thought, well, those guys, if they died for little money for their country, they're losers and suckers. And the generals were so pissed, but they didn't say anything. But they did tell the Atlantic magazine that story. And that's how it got out. You've never heard it on Fox television, on their news, because they protect them. They would never tell that story because they're like the Soviet Union's TASS news agency. They're like the state propaganda network. they won't say anything that Trump says. So I know many of the voters, the MAGAs as they call them, never heard that story probably in their life. If they happen to tune in today, unlikely, they probably heard it for the first time. So yes, it's a military abomination that man will start a war that America, well, 80% of the polls, we don't want that war. We didn't need that war. 13 men have already died for that war, and about 40,000 Iranian men, women, and children. There was no need for it. So this is more politics, Jimmy, than I had planned today. I chase people away if they want to come here and we want to talk sports and Padres and all that, which we still will do today.
We will do that.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Okay, let me interject.
Yep.
And this will get you going.
And that's a good technique, Jim. That's a good technique. Let me interject. We'll use that as our code because I have diarrhea of the mouth. Doctors have told me that. They have diarrhea of the mouth. So don't let me rant and rave. Jump in.
One word. I want your reaction. Evangelicals.
Evangelicals, did you say?
They support this guy who.
Oh, I know. And many of them think he's the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Oh, God bless America.
And I'm not a Christian, so I would never say. My mother taught us. My mother respected all religions and taught us the same thing. And I would never say a bad word about any religion. But these evangelicals are misguided. Even the Pope, who seems to be such a wonderful Prince of Peace, such a wonderful man, and made that comment when people were saying, well, why did you vote for him? Or why did you vote for him again? Well, Your Holiness, because of the abortion issue, and the Republicans are against abortion, and as a Catholic or as a Christian, I'm against abortion. And even the Pope said, you have to understand, because of the evil, this is what made Trump crazy and got him into the war with the Pope. When the Pope said, you have to not vote because of the evil involved here in this world these days. You can't vote just on one issue, because that one issue will make you vote for someone that you shouldn't have voted for. That was the Pope getting around it to say it without actually saying Trump's name, that there's too much evil here in the world, wink, wink, and don't vote just based on the abortion issue. That's important, certainly to the Catholic Church, but that's not the be all and end all. And that's what's happened. And the evangelicals, way before this Pope had made those anti-Trump indirect comments, somehow gravitate toward him, I think, based on his saying that he was the chosen one and Jesus is a representative and all these other insane things. This is the least Christ-like man that exists.
Let me interject.
Sure.
I met the Pope once before he was Pope.
I didn't know that.
We were at a function together, and he gave the invocation, and I was one of the guests standing at the dais, sitting nearby him. Cool. And there was another clergyman there, a priest, and he said that he kind of poked me when Leo was introduced. He wasn't Leo back then, and he said to me, "There's a lot of talk he could one day be the Pope." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, no way! We're some small town in Ohio at some
Americans are never popes. No
Pope.
This guy's
giving an invocation, and one day he's going to be the Pope." Sure enough, one day he became the Pope. Crazy, huh?
And I love that, by the way. I love that as a non-Christian, and trying, like my mom said, and everything my mom said is holy and sacred to me because of my love for her and how great she was. So when she says you respect other religions, and that includes Islam, I have to respect all religions. But I've always thought that the concept of the Catholic Church having, I don't know exactly how it's worded, God's representative on earth gives me chills. It gives me chills. So my respect and for Pope Paul and so many others, and this man has been so, it gives me goosebumps. And I find it to be, as a pretty much non-religious guy, I think it's wonderful that they believe this man is God's representative. And when he goes out amongst the people, they have their chills and they are crying, and it means so much to them. But in terms of your evangelical, I have no idea. I have no idea. This man has never been religious ever in his family or himself. He's never read the Bible, all those questions about, I've got many Bibles in my house. Give us one passage. No, I can't pick out one. He's full of crap, and he's a liar. Okay. We all know that.
Okay, Ted.
Yeah.
You're making a lot of sense again. But I have to interject.
Doesn't happen often.
Because on my screen it says, welcome to the Leitner and Laz podcast. Now, I think on my screen, it should say, welcome to the Laz and Leitner podcast. On your screen, it should say, it's not even alphabetical, Leitner and Laz. L-E, alphabetically,
Give me my props. Give me my props. Then when you and I talked, did I not say that if we go, I think Laz with Leitner or Laz and Leitner sounds better, smoother from a broadcast standpoint. We should go with Laz and Leitner. I did not choose Leitner first. Am I telling the truth or not?
Two things. One, you're wrong. And I've never said that to you before in my life. Number two, it sounds better, Leitner and Laz. You're right. Yeah, that just leave it at that. I'm just kidding. But it just popped up on my screen and I happened to notice it and think, second billing. Just when I used to share an office with you. Oh, actually, I shared an office with your desk. This is a true story, folks.
Yeah.
Ted we talked about this, I know, but the stacks and stacks of mail was just incredible. And you'd come forward and you'd have a 5:15 hit. Remember, Leitner strikes. We talked about this, but I have to say it again. And you would plow in at about 5:05, and you'd sit down at the desk, and somebody would throw a sheet in your way, say, "This is the tape we have," and you'd come up with something to talk about, completely off the cuff. And then 30 minutes after that, you'd do a full sportscast.
A lot of that was by design. It was by design because in Oklahoma City, I used a script, and then I was going to leave and go with the Post Newsweek company in Hartford, Connecticut. Why?
Wait. Top billing, the Laz and Leitner podcast. You see it? Okay.
And I decided to put pressure on myself in going to a new station and a big company, Post Newsweek, which was big stuff for me, and going back east and all that stuff. I decided I'm not going to use a script anymore. I'm just going to try to talk. Right now, I'm going to try not to sneeze. Hang on.
Bless you.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. So I decided to just kind of ad-lib it. And I talked to the TV director and said, look, I'm going to start talking about the Whalers, and then I'll talk about UConn, and then I'll do something on the Red Sox, and I'll do it in that order. If you can follow me, it'll be great. And that's how I started doing that and did that in Hartford, then Philadelphia, and then here in San Diego. And I don't have a photographic memory, but I was able to remember and do what I want to do.
You have a photographic memory.
No. People who really have, Jim, photographic memories, I'm not anywhere near that. Not at all. But I can remember, and even getting ready for a broadcast for a football game or a basketball game, and memorizing, like for football, the number of every wide receiver, everybody on the defense, and every running back. And then I could see the number and think of the name like that. I have no idea why. And I could even see that team like later in that year or the next season and still remember the names of the guys on other, not obviously clearly on the Aztecs and Chargers easily, but on the other visiting teams, I would still remember them. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was able to do that stuff. And I liked it. And I think it made me different. And I was nothing else except different.
Totally different.
And like I said, people, because I gave opinions, because I'm a big mouth New York guy with a lot of opinions, a typical New York fan. And that doesn't play here. At the beginning, it was like, who the hell is he to tell us what he thinks? He just got here, kind of a thing. And of course, they were right. And it led to that division of love and hate. I told you, didn't I, that Rusty Nails, the late Rusty Nails, a wonderful guy, was a funny comedian. And my in-laws at the time went to see him, I think, at the Improv when they had it down in Pacific Beach. And his line was, you talk about this guy on Channel 8, this Ted Leitner guy. And I believe the marketing research shows that you either hate Ted Leitner or you are Ted Leitner. Greatest line of all time. Rusty had the greatest line of all time.
That wasn't a joke, Ted. That's true.
It absolutely is true. So I thought always that we had the perfect blend, that I was the one who was there and hated by a large number of people. Jim was liked by the largest number of people. And we were the sports team on Channel 8 for many, many years. And it kind of was a yin and yang thing, and up and down, and white and black and whatever, that, if you don't like Ted, stay tuned and listen to Jim. Yeah. You will like him.
Here's
he's a former Charger.
But here's the truth of it. You made fun about jocks getting into broadcasting. And we had a news director who had a keen sense of humor. So he said, there's an opening. Why don't I get a former jock who wants to go into broadcasting? So I got the call. I'd been working a little bit at Channel 10 here in San Diego, and I hadn't been on air much, but he had seen me and he thought, well, we'll give it a try. Well, I was totally unprepared for the way the shows were put together at Channel 8.
Right.
I didn't edit. I didn't know how to record the stuff I was supposed to then edit and then put it on the air and write my scripts and do it the old conventional way. And so I struggled mightily. And thank goodness we had a news director who was compassionate and thought, well, I got this guy into this. I might as well try to bail him out. So they got me a producer, Rich Rudy. And Rich took care of me, and I stumbled along the way mightily. Gave you a lot of material, Ted. I know.
I never ever criticized Jim, not to his face, not on the air, not on my radio shows, not on television. I'm proud to say that, and I'm not making. I never criticized guys.
But wait a second, I have to say this. Let me interrupt you again. When I do this, I need to interrupt you because you were such a dominant sports personality that they could afford to have a newbie like me with you. And so I appreciate that. And I've never, ever forgotten that. The only reason I got to start in San Diego is because you were so strong and the station could afford to, probably couldn't afford anybody else either. I work cheap.
And I will. And I only patted myself on the back, which I've told you, is that our news director, Jim Holtzman, came to me and said, I'm thinking about Laz, as you know, from the Chargers, and as the weekend guy and so on and so on. And do you have any objections? I said, no, not at all. Great guy. Everybody loves him. And I know the audience will love him. And I'm sure he'll have to get into it. It's not easy for everybody. Everybody who watches thinks it's easy until you start to do it. But I think Laz will be fine. Laz will be great. So I at least was on board with having you there. And I think it worked out great for both of us.
Yeah. So what else is on your mind, Ted? What's jumping out at you? What's jumping out at you?
What that you asked that. Because I thought of this yesterday.
Oh, look.
I've always, athletes have said I picked on them. And
look at that.
Yeah. And talked about their salaries and so forth and so on. But I've always had this thing about what you guys did. And this is in every sport. And I used to think, what if that was the same way with me? And they would come to me at age, whatever, 33, 35, whatever, and say, you're done. You're done. Your broadcast career is over. You're too old. You can't do it. And I used to start to think about that as a young, smart-ass broadcaster back then, hated by the players on most teams, Chargers, yes, and Padres. I know that. Who's he to say I should have had that ball? Who's he to say I had a bad game or whatever? So I knew this. But then when I started to think, imagine if we were all like athletes and we were told, you're done. That's it. And nobody else wants you, and that's it. And I thought, wow, these guys are told that what you do best, what you will always done best, and what you've always loved and made good money for and at, you can never do it again. How the hell did you get through that? and you can answer that by saying, I got a broadcast job, I made great money, but most guys don't do that like you did and have chapter 2.
Yeah. Back in my day, it was critical to get a college degree. So you would have something to fall back on.
Right.
And then, and it was pounded into me, work in the off season towards something that you're going to have to do after this career ends, because you might not last more than 3 or 4 years. So it was pounded into me by some of the older players. And, I sold nuts and bolts in Detroit. Did you know that? I sold industrial fasteners to the auto industry. So my clients were at Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, and International Harvester, I believe. But I did that in the off season for about 2 or 3 years. And I thought, maybe there's something out there that I can do. This doesn't involve driving around town and taking people to lunch. And that was when I decided to get into broadcasting. But did you see the photograph they just popped up there?
Yes.
What talent? I mean, look at the talent on this.
That, to me, is one of the greatest groups of news people in a news organization, all put together by Jim Holtzman, who I mentioned, who is in retirement now in North Carolina, and hired Mike Tuck. And I had gotten there, and Tom Lawrence, really nice guy, was the anchor man. And
Lauren Nancaro, Marty Levine,
may he rest in peace, one of the great people of all time.
I mean, these people, they got skills. Michael Tuck, Allison Ross, that Ted Leitner guy.
Yeah, and not just the anchors, the news people, the reporters, the assignment editors, the editors themselves, the photographers. A couple of those photographers are still there, and Tom Warren and Ron Johnson and those guys. I mean, just terrific up and down across the board. And Jim put that together. He had a great sense of talent and was able to do that. And so he asked me about an anchorman. I said I worked with Mike Tuck at the CBS station that's owned by CBS in Philadelphia. I said Mike had replaced the great John Facenda. You know that name, Jim.
Wow.
He was the voice of NFL films with that great, incredible Green Bay, Wisconsin, the frozen tundra. You can't even imitate that voice.
Tundra.
Yeah, of John Facenda. And I got to know John because his office in retirement at the station was next to mine as the weekend sports guy. And the weekday sports guy was Tom Brookshire, who was working then with Pat Summerall as the #1 analyst on NFL CBS telecast. So Mike Tuck, the young guy, replaced John Facenda, and it's impossible to replace John because he was so beloved in Philadelphia. So Mike came out here to anchor with us, and it was the final piece to what I said was just a simply magnificent news organization, top to bottom.
Well, yeah, and Holtzman was such a good newsman.
Oh yeah,
he knew the stories to attack.
Yeah. And that was when TV news was TV news. No offense, but toward the end of our TV run, they started the salespeople, and so not that was their fault, but started. What's our story? We're going to go do a live shot from a new opening of a Dow stereo store. What? That's news. That's news. No, we're going to start using news to promote.
Can you imagine Holtzman's reaction?
Advertising, yeah, and make money. And that was not what news was about, especially when you're a CBS affiliate. And CBS was the strictest of all time with Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, all these amazing people who, again, not to do politics, but I wouldn't give you 50 cents for CBS now. They have been bought out. And all of these, you might say, I don't care about CBS. All of these threats to the free press, you can't have a democracy without a completely free press. So as the billionaire friends of Trump buy out Paramount, which owns CBS, and now they're buying CNN, all of a sudden it'll be, don't tell that story. Kill that story, because it makes my guy that I give money to in the office makes him look bad. Don't do it. And that's what's happening now. And that's the Ellisons who started Oracle, who are the billionaires who have been killing stories at 60 Minutes and elsewhere that have been anti-Trump. And that's how a free press dies, and that's how a democracy dies. So all that talk about why you have to stand up and shout it to the rafters, because if you don't do it now, your children and grandchildren will be sitting here thinking, how did that happen here in America? How could we become a dictatorship? That would have been impossible. But we've seen now with this guy and the Republicans who see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and watch their country being torn apart and the Constitution being used to, housebreak a dog. It can happen here. And I'm sorry, I hate to have anybody who used to like me as a sportscaster suddenly don't like me because I say that, but I can't care about me. I've had my career.
Okay.
Jim's had his career. I don't care. I don't care what people think of me. My country's more important than I am. That's all.
Democracy dies in darkness, and there's a glooming going over our free press, and it's alarming.
No question.
That's why I showed up at that march the other day. I just had to get out there and hopefully not be alone, and I certainly wasn't. There were thousands of people out there just protesting, but it's sobering. I mean, being the son of an immigrant, all my dad wanted was a chance. He got a chance, and guess what? He made it. He made himself. He made his family. He made his country better, and not in any great leaps and bounds. But when you have millions of JLs, my dad's nickname, millions of JLs working their tails off to make life better for themselves and their family, you make the country better, and you give people an opportunity. And guess what? They perform. They perform.
You know, a great example of that: the construction industry. All these Mexican Americans and other Latinos who don't show up for work anymore because they think ICE is going to come and beat the hell out of them while they're in handcuffs. Of course, they're so brave. Put them in handcuffs, beat the hell out of them. Even the ones who will say, I'm an American citizen. Let me show you my ID. Shut up. And put them on a plane and send them 1,000 miles away to a concentration camp / prison without an attorney, without any charges, without due process. And even if you're an immigrant or an illegal immigrant, if you are on, as the Constitution says, if you're on American soil, you are entitled to due process.
That's
You
right.
could be as guilty as hell, but you're on our soil. And as Jim says, that's what makes us America. That's what makes us so damn great and so special. We didn't need MAGA to make America great again. It's always been great, always flawed, makes its mistakes. We never say we were perfect, but we're the best damn country that has ever been in the history of mankind. We are a country of immigrants. And like Jim said, my grandparents from Russia, I get a little emotional about this, but from Russia and Germany, they passed the Statue of Liberty sailing into New York Harbor, and everybody in the boat is crying. And the Hispanics are talking about La Mujer en el agua, the woman in the water. That's what they call the Statue of Liberty. And nowadays, you need to put a hood over her head. You know what I mean? Or put a sign, whites only, across her chest. And if you're not aggrieved by that and speak out, it has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It's about America. And what the Constitution says is law. The Bible is not the law of this land. Speaking of the evangelicals, like I said, no offense to any Christian, but the Bible, we are a country of laws, and it's the Constitution that we go by, not the Bible. If you go by the Bible, then you're Iran, you're Iraq, you're Saudi Arabia. We don't do that. We don't do that. We have all these.
It's a nice guideline. It's a nice guideline,
yeah.
But it's not the law of the land. It is a nice guideline.
And I think personally, if you follow the 10 Commandments, then you're a good person. And you'll be a good person, and your children will be taught that. So I have no problem with any of that or religion. But when it starts to get like this, and it's white supremacy, you know what I mean? And that's suddenly okay. That's okay again, because the guy in the White House is a stone cold racist without any question. When you show the Obamas as apes viral across the world, you're a racist. And there's 1,000 examples like that. And Republicans, like I said, they don't say a word. They don't say a word. That's danger. That's danger to America, and I will not shut up. And nobody else should. This is no time to be quiet. And like I said, I've never been quiet anyway. I suffer from word hemorrhages. But
that's why I am what I am.
Popeye, exactly right. I'm like Popeye. I am what I am, but it's all what I am. And the hell with it. But it makes me. I'll put it this way. Jim, I've never been to a psychiatrist in my life. Now I go to a psychiatrist. He's wonderful. He's marvelous. I would mention his name, but I don't think medical people and professionals like to have that sort of advertising or whatever. Maybe it's good for business, but they always don't like that from my experience. And he will tell me the same thing. And he's told me, as a psychiatrist, I've got to give people answers. I've got to come up with the goods. In this case, Ted, I have no answers because I feel the same way you do. And most doctors do, because, this group is cutting research on pediatric cancer. Childhood cancer research has been cut. You have a lunatic in charge of Health and Human Services who thinks vaccines are hooey. Don't take vaccines. And now people are dying from measles. I mean, it's not just the president. It's all the people around him who are either crazy or incompetent. So like I said, speak out now so your grandchildren won't be sitting around thinking, how in the world did we become a dictatorship? We must vote all of these Republicans out because they've acquiesced. They've acquiesced to this, and they said nothing about this. They let it go. They've been silent. Unacceptable. You have to go. You have to go. That's all. Wow.
I just realized I was slouching through that whole thing. I think the weight of your
better?
Conversation had been going lower and lower. Okay.
I've made some more enemies, but I don't care. I don't care because
I'm with you.
The people who voted for this a second time and voted for, well, as we talked about, the commander in chief. When you vote for a convicted felon. First time you might have not known, but the second time around, when you vote for a man who led an insurrection, started it, sent the crowd to do it, to kill the vice president of the United States, topple the government of the United States, and not allow the peaceful transition of a election that was certified by 60 courtrooms and 60 judges, Democrats and Republicans, including Republican judges who were appointed by Trump. They said there is no fraud whatsoever in this election. Next case. So he was lying about that. But these people who give their heart and soul to him, they live for him for whatever reason. He makes them feel good about themselves, that they're not losers. And he points out people he thinks are losers, immigrants and African Americans, Latinos, women. You haven't had. It's not your problem. It's your problem because of these people, and makes them hate the people and groups that he hates, and he plays to that hate, and they re-elect a convicted felon, rapist, and who is clearly, according to his own niece, a clinical psychologist. He
doesn't win without the evangelicals, which is stunning to me that they want that type of a person to lead our country.
Right.
But it's just not him. I mean, what J.D. Vance is contorting himself into being nowhere near the person that I thought he was when you read, Hillbilly Elegy. I mean, come on, really?
Many people,
this is who this guy is?
No, people have sold out to it, and they've closed their eyes to it because they want the power. Power is an aphrodisiac, not to just men and women. Everybody loves power, and if my way to get power and keep this job and be a senator, a congressman, a secretary of whatever, and I got to sell my soul for this guy, they've sold their soul.
Okay, Ted, we're running out of time. I have to ask you.
About time.
What are you reading these days? Are you pick up any books? What are you reading?
You know what I'm reading? The latest Jack Reacher book by Lee Child. Jack Reacher, great character, 6'4", 250, kicks ass all the time. Great character. They're not great writers who write him, but they're entertaining books because he's beating up all bad guys all the time. And I'm reading Barbara Streisand's autobiography.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely fantastic.
I'll bet.
Because in reading it, and always being a fan, but now I'm a super fan because what I grew up with in New York, with my dad, she grew up with her mother in terms of negativity. And you're no good. And you'll never be any good. And forget broadcasting. You have no talent. And all those kinds of things. She grew up like that. Everything from her mother was negative. And her stepfather never even talked to her. Think about that. So when that happens to a young brain, it changes that young brain. And you are never anything but nervous, anxious. You worry all the time. And you have a lousy self-image and prestige. You don't have any self-prestige. That was me. That was Barbara Streisand. It's been fascinating to me. I feel like she's my sister. We're so alike that I feel she's my sister.
Yeah, that is so
and if
great.
she was, I'd ask her for a loan because she's done very well.
What part of the Apple were you raised in?
Huh?
I forgot, Ted. Where were you raised? Which borough?
I was in the Bronx. She was in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But all the foods that she mentions and the Horn and Hardart, this is for New Yorkers now, for Horn and Hardart, the automat, they called it, where you put a nickel in these little windows and the window would slide open and you take your sandwich and then a piece of pie and macaroni and cheese and whatever. And that's how New York ate back then, with big portions for very little money. And in my era, in the 50s, her era also, she's 83 and she's older than I am. But if you had $1 in the 50s, it'd last you all week because things cost 2 cents and a nickel. And the movie cost 25 cents. It was a wonderful time.
I had money, Ted. I had a paper route. I had money. We had a corner store. Across from the corner store was Grandma's Saloon, and then across from Grandma's Saloon was my house where I was raised. It was heaven. It was absolute heaven. I'd go to the penny counter store, at penny candy, and my favorite were those hearts. You didn't have these. You get 4 for a penny. 4 for a penny, little hearts. Oh yeah, and then I just down them. I'd get a dime's worth. I'd be set for a whole day.
It's so true. It's so true. And in our neighborhood in the Bronx, It was there was a delicatessen. There was a delicatessen on every. There's a the what do you call it? The automat, they call it the automat, and everything was a nickel. Everything was a nickel, and I mean it was amazing. The dollar, the dollar was backed by gold. This was before we started printing money without having the backing of gold, and it was for a kid. If you had a buck, my gosh, and you mowed a lawn and you got 50 cents. You could eat for the rest of the week. It was just fantastic. And where we were in our neighborhood, it was mostly a Jewish area, and there was a delicatessen on every block. Literally in the Bronx, there were 53 authentic delicatessens.
Wow.
Now in the Bronx, there's one.
Wow.
Because of the Hispanics, the Puerto Ricans in this case, and others, Jamaicans and what have you, Haitians, and I'm good with all that. I had no problem with that, but that was the difference in the population. And now all those delicatessens died.
Yeah.
And also the other reasons that people were leaving, as Jim said, going out to the suburbs from the Bronx, and they didn't want to eat that food. And also it was expensive. You can get a Quiznos or a Subway for $5. A big corned beef sandwich would cost $29. So it was a many factors, but it was such a great time to be a kid and safe. And we'd go play. Mom, I'm going. Be home before dark.
Yeah.
Be home for dinner. And nobody knew where we were. Nobody cared. You were safe. And it was, as mine has been and yours has been, because we have been in America, a great life.
Amen. Can't add to that.
Yeah, we will end on that because we have had a great life. Jim has had 2 careers. I've had a career that lasted. My last Aztec basketball game, I was 77 when they played North Carolina in Dayton. I guess it was Dayton. No, it wasn't Dayton. Whatever it was, I forget. Also, a lot of that's going on, forgetting. But I've been blessed, totally blessed. As I said in my book, when I dedicated it to my mom, she was the first gift that I was lucky enough to get. And I've had many others, as Jim has had with his immigrant parents and my parents, who were sons and daughters of immigrants and in a country of immigrants. And I'm proud to say that. And the idea that immigrants have been demonized when they've been great and have helped make this country great, anyone who demonizes immigrants should apologize.
I just got a news alert where somebody attacked a Jewish couple. And it's one of those news alerts that pops up on your screen. And I don't have the full story, but it's amazing to think that this is happening in this day and age. I mean, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. People, transcend the bullshit.
I know.
Just get over it, please. Get over it. We're in this together.
Yeah, Jim, the key to me, the 2 things. When we were growing up, you and I, the comment was, I hate what you just said on radio or at a speech. I
know the finish of that. I'll defend to my death, your right to say it.
Bingo. I hate what you said, and I will defend to my death your right to say it. That's what made us different than even all the democracies, Great Britain and France and so forth, because that was the truth. I will die defending what you had to say. The Republicans have killed that. Trump has killed that. We have to get it back. And we are indeed, as I said, a country, immigrants. Every single one of them, every single one was faced with discrimination. Whether you were Irish, Jewish, Slavic, what have you, you went through it. African Americans, of course.
Yeah.
You went through it, but you went through it, and you got acclimatized, and you got assimilated, and you loved the country. You loved the country, and you contributed to it so much. Like I started to mention before, the construction people, my best guys are gone. They think they're going to be arrested by ICE. My foreman was Mexican. My best workers were Mexican. And now we have a soft building market anyway, and we've lost our best workers. And it's insane to demonize these people. They're wonderful family people. So that's what's happened. I'll leave you with this. Go to YouTube and type in Martin Luther King on immigrants. It's a YouTube of about 5 or 7 minutes of Dr. King, and it's entitled "What America Owes Its Immigrants." Listen to that. I know if you're a MAGA type, it won't do a damn thing, but I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, we got a sports question.
Ooh.
thinking back on the great sports moments in your career, my career that we've covered or been part of, is soccer 17 titles? Is it SDSU hoops? Of course, you were closely associated with them. 84 Padres. Is it the Air Coryell Chargers?
So many.
I'll tell you what. When we got back from one of the playoff games,
Chicago,
and there was this unbelievable rally to welcome us back.
Yeah.
And then after the Chargers, when I was there, we came back after losing the Freezer Bowl. The crowd was almost as big as when we won. They were there to greet us and to thank us for the effort we put forth. And I'll tell you, it was incredibly moving. But you were part of those celebrations too.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I remember on Friars Road coming back from Chicago, down 2-0 in '84.
Yeah.
And we're driving along, and we see the lights are on at the stadium and in the parking lot. And some of the players said, "What the hell's going on?" It must have been a concert. I think it was a Jehovah's Witness meeting. I think it was this. I think it was that. And well, no, damn, we're going to try to go get our cars, and then all those cars will be coming out. We'll be in a traffic jam. Oh, damn it! And then we got closer and closer. We heard the cheering, and thought, no, there's nothing going on. At least not now. Look at us, 10, 15,000 people. And we're hugely involved, and part of it was our station, KFMB radio, that was promoting this and to welcome the boys back. Oh, down 2-0 or not, and it was one of the most amazing moments that the players from that era still talk about. And like we talked about Padre fans, we weren't kissing up as to how great they are and how great San Diego Charger fans were. They're there, and they're down 2-0, and the odds against you are enormous. And everybody knows what happened. Everybody knows what happened.
Here's another question before we leave. Are we always going to be a minor league sports town? And we have a bad rap.
We're not a minor league sports town. We're not a minor league sports town. We're a major league sports town that lost its football team. And early
minor
before
league owners. Minor league owners and minor league
it didn't start with the Chargers.
Politicians.
We'd already lost the Clippers. And before that, we'd lost the San Diego Rockets, and the Conquistadors died. So losing the Rockets when Bob Breitbart had them, they're the Houston Rockets. They still could be and should be the San Diego Rockets. Then we have NBA and Chargers and Padre baseball. And with a minor league hockey club, that does not make you a minor league city. So when I got here in '78, I believed it was a major league city. Hartford, where I had been, was not a major league city. It was the Whalers until the WHA died. And it was a hell of a sports town to me, but losing the Chargers was enormous. But like I say, when you outdraw the Yankees, the Mets, and the Phillies, you're a major league city.
Yeah.
That's what Padre fans still show us.
Yeah, it's again. I'll say it's not the fans. We've been challenged by our ownership. The ownership, small market ownership, in not a small market town, and not small market fans.
No, it's big. It's 3.3 million. That's not a small market. Yes, 29th is a small television market, but it's not a small market. It's a big market based on area. San Diego and Tampa St. Pete are the biggest by area of any cities in the country. Always has been that way. So it's a great city. Take a look out the window. Like Jim said, I got traded to San Diego. Yeah. Yeah. That's how everybody reacts. That's why they come here with the Navy, or they come here on vacation and they then buy a condo and they move, because it's a great place. It is America's finest city. So I don't buy that rap. I just don't buy that rap. Don Sterling killed our NBA club. We'd have the San Diego Clippers to this day and the Chargers. We've had local governments, I think, that could not build a good sandwich. That was a problem in terms of actually having
Good point.
The council, city manager, and mayor that was progressive and really we're going to get this done by God no matter what it takes. If John Moores and Lucchino hadn't said, "Hey, you stopped us for 2 years. We got rotting steel here," they could have pulled the plug, and we have no baseball team, and no baseball stadium. Then you can talk about being a minor league city. But John Moores hung in there, thank God, and spent more of his millions of dollars. All that opportunity cost, when everything cost more at the end of the 2-year delay, by nonsensical lawsuits by those clowns back then. You have to fight like hell to get something done here politically, but I wouldn't move if you put a gun to my head. That's how most of us feel. We're from someplace else, but you can't beat San Diego.
I got to get in a plug. Ted, I get in a plug. I'm getting something on my screen. It says "Great sandwiches at Hilltop Deli in El Cajon."
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
I eat there. I'm a big Hilltop guy.
that's your place.
Sure. And I do want to mention I'm going to be on. We're going to have a Padre roundtable with Ben and Woods and a bunch of others tomorrow morning at 9 on the Fan, 97.3 The Fan. I'll mention that for my next broadcast thing. I don't do too many broadcast things. Neither does Jim. That's why we want to do this broadcast thing. And we'll be with you next Wednesday, hopefully on time if I don't screw it up with the equipment, which I'm known to do. Our producer is Joe Nelson of the Producer Joe fame on his own podcast, producing this podcast. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Laz. Love you, bud. Thank you all on the Leitner with Laz. Could have easily been Laz with Leitner. I would have been fine, but we'll see you next week.
Right back
Next
at you, Ted. Have a good
at
week.
4. God bless.